Dr. Cornel West is being smeared yet again, this time by David Axelrod. Now, David Axelrod, we've talked about him before. He comes from that Obama administration. He's terrible, terrible guy. I don't want to get into the whole thing. But David Axelrod made a statement saying that Cornel West could actually help Donald Trump because of the fact that Dr. West is running third party. Now, we heard this before when Jill Stein ran in 2016. They're doing the fear mongering again. Let's go ahead and get into this clip here from Case Study QB.
Tonight, risky business. Former senior advisor to President Obama, David Axelrod, warning Biden could be facing a third-party spoiler, specifically from Green Party candidate Cornel West. Axelrod tweeting, quote, "In 2016, the Green Party played an outsized role in tipping the election to Donald Trump. Now, with Cornel West as their likely nominee, they could easily do it again. Risky business."
This is actually false, and I need to interrupt this here. This statement here from David Axelrod saying 2016, the Green Party played an outsized role in tipping the election to Donald Trump. That is actually false, and that is a lie that is constantly being told by the Democratic Party, by these DNC goons like David Axelrod, people like Hillary Clinton. That is a lie. You remember at one point in time, they tried to say it was Bernie Sanders' fault that Donald Trump won. Let me explain to you why this is not true. If you look at the numbers, and if everyone who voted for Jill Stein in 2016, if all those votes went to Hillary Clinton and all of the Gary Johnson votes went to Donald Trump still wins. This is the piece that they don't tell you, and this is important for people to understand. Those voters, those third-party voters, those are not spoiler candidates. Those voters, if there weren't third-party candidates, if there wasn't a Jill Stein, if there wasn't a Gary Johnson, those voters in turn do not say, I am going to vote for Hillary Clinton. Those voters stay home. And we have to continue to reiterate this message because I'm so sick and tired of the Democratic Party saying this. These establishment people, they do this to put fear into you so that you will be scared again and go, oh no, Donald Trump, I guess I have to go ahead and support Joe Biden after all. This is a lie. This is not true. So again, the third party voters in turn do not give that support to the Democrat or the Republican. They stay home, which means that Trump still wins. Now, instead of blaming people like Dr. West for running Green Party, maybe you should point your finger at Joe Biden and blame him for being such a weak ass president. That's who people should be blaming.
This comes as less than 40% of Americans say they view Biden or Trump favorably. Almost 1 in 4 voters, in fact, say they don't like either candidate, which is
this right here lets you know. Favorable views of candidates, 39% Joe Biden, 38% Donald Trump, 24% say neither. And it is this neither that you need to pay attention to, because those are the people, if they do vote, they're most likely going to vote for a libertarian candidate, a Green Party candidate, or an independent candidate. And those neither are not going to change their mind and say, oh no, I don't want to get Trump. Let me vote for Joe Biden. People have to understand that.
a key part of Cornel West's pitch.
I just thought about all the creative, imaginative, courageous fellow citizens that I meet, and how do we end up with the two candidates? Trump on the one hand, Biden on the other. Good God. With Brother Trump, you've got a gangster in the objective sense. And with Biden, again, I love the brother, but he's a hypocrite. And he's pushing toward World War III when you talk about what he has to say about China and Russia.
So this is important for people to understand. The reason why you have these candidates, these third-party candidates, is because, number one, they are not a part of the duopoly. They know it's corrupt. They know that these parties belong to Wall Street and the military-industrial complex. So people should have the right and the opportunity to vote for someone outside of that duopoly. Now, there are two clips here I want to show you. There's part one and a part two. And they're talking again about Cornel West joining the presidential race and if he could attract GOP votes. Listen to this, because two parts, and pay attention to what the gentleman in the yellow tie says. He actually hits it on point here.
To that point that you're both making, she was then asked about Cornel West, and she referenced that. So I think we have that sound as well.
What do you make of Cornel West campaign?
You know, I think Dr. West has an incredible history in this country. What he fights for, what he gives voice to is incredibly important. And the ability for us to talk about issues that, frankly, mainstream Democrats are often too afraid to touch.
I mean, Joe, that's essentially what you were saying. I mean, and you're...
We're going to pause here for just a second because I want to add something to that. We're going to show the rest of that video in a second. AOC said that Dr. West has the respectable history in this country, right? And Joe Biden doesn't. But yet you're going to see later on in tonight's show that she's choosing to endorse Joe Biden and not the candidate that has the respectable history. Now, she knows she can't come too harshly at Dr. West because people will look at her sideways. The progressive base that she still has left, the few that are still hanging on, that still believe that she's going to fight for things. If she comes out heavily against Dr. West, those people will finally see through. Oh, my God, people were right. She really is corrupt. She really has changed, yada, yada. So she knows she has to say something good about Dr. West. Now, take what she just told you and then apply that to the story later on when we talk about her choosing to support Joe Biden. Now, let's go back a little bit here.
To touch.
I mean, Joe, that's essentially what you were saying. I mean, and you're both agreeing with each other, right? So what is the potential, not just for Cornel West to maybe peel away some of those voters and maybe even beyond people of color, right? We're talking about working class voters, full stop, in this country who are looking for somebody to talk about their issues. Could he also pull some away from if it's a Donald Trump as the nominee?
Well, look, you see even now with somebody like RFK Jr., who is starting to attract some traction from some Republican voters. So there is a fervor in America for people who are willing to speak to the populist ambitions of the nation, but also the core bedrock actual deficiencies within our Main Street construct. So yes, I think if Dr. West was being wise, he'd probably just abandon everything he's doing everywhere and move to Iowa. There's a long tradition of grassroots support, particularly more in the populist and more liberal-leaning bent in those Democratic caucuses. So he should be going to all 99 of those counties and then go back again, then go back again. The South Carolina primary has already been rigged. Certainly Democrats trying to...
Did you hear what he just said? And I'm surprised they actually let him say this on CNN. Listen to this piece right here. Listen to what he says about South Carolina.
And then go back again. The South Carolina primary has already been rigged.
He just said on CNN, the South Carolina primary has already been rigged. I'm surprised they let someone say that on CNN. So people need to know, like, people are taking off the blinders, guys. Taking off the blinders here. Let's pay attention.
Certainly Democrats trying to figure out whether they're going to move it up or leave it where it is. So there's not a lot of oxygen there where, again, they say they know Joe. I think that's where he could have some impact. But I think to your point, there is a broad consensus from all Americans that we want to have somebody that speaks to the fact that we're spending money on wars abroad. We're not dealing with the fact that we've got public housing in crisis here at home.
Now, why is this conversation important? 2 years ago, you would have not seen this gentleman on CNN to give that same talking point that he just gave. Remember, CNN got new management and they're trying to be, I guess, a little bit more middle of the road now and offer voices from those who are Republican as well. So you're hearing things that you normally would not have heard on CNN. Now, this is part two. Listen to this piece as well.
And if I could just add very quickly, there needs to be, Elaine, I think AOC was speaking to this, for a Bernie Sanders type candidate. Someone who's going to pull the party and hold Democrats and hold them accountable for a lot of those issues that we haven't necessarily talked about. But if you look at what Bernie Sanders did, look at the impact he's had on how we've talked about college and the college affordability today.
There needs to be a Bernie Sanders type candidate, but not through the Democratic Party. And that's what Dr. West is. But he goes further than Bernie Sanders in reference to his campaign platform. He's pushing issues that Bernie Sanders did not have the guts to talk about, or he didn't talk about it in the right way. So I think this is important for people to understand. Now, the problem, though, again, if you hold on to what AOC just said, and when we get to this story later on, you'll understand why this is also problematic. If she feels that there should be a Bernie Sanders type of candidate, then why is she not supporting or endorsing the Bernie Sanders type of candidate? Let's continue. Let's go up just a little bit more. There we go.
In the college affordability today, how we talked about healthcare. There needs to be that voice in this conversation. And if Cornel West is going to play any part in this, that's the voice that's the lane that I think he occupies. And to your point about the South Carolina primary, what Joe Biden can do, since that's likely the first primary, is start talking about those issues early, set the tone, and hope that that carries into the general election. But speaking on it once,
talking about Joe Biden talking about those issues early really doesn't really change anything, because he's already been president. He's already the incumbent, and he hasn't been able to, or not be able, he has not fulfilled any of those types of policies. He's against Medicare for all. He's lying on Twitter right now, saying everybody should have health care. Like this, everyone can see through this time around, but he's already had time if he wanted to try to implement those policies. Instead, he vocally said, no, I would not implement those policies. So this gentleman, the Democratic strategist, saying he should start talking about those issues early on. Well, he has talked about those issues, but he's talked about it in an unfavorable way. He hasn't talked about those issues saying he supports it. He's talked about those issues saying that he would veto it. That's the problem. So now if Joe Biden switches his tone, it looks suspect to people.
But speaking on it once, letting it go, not addressing it again, is a losing proposition.
And that's why I see so many more African-American men, bit by bit, slowly moving to the right, because I think at some point they're willing to consider alternatives because they feel as if their needs have been neglected for so long.
Joe, Basil, great to have you.
And that piece right there is very important. The number of African Americans that have been leaving the Democratic Party, because again, people have felt neglected by the Democratic Party. Democratic Party says that they're the party that Black people, or they care about Black people, but they haven't done anything in reference to the Black community. They're not doing anything in reference to the working class community. So eventually it gets to the point where people will start to pull away. Now, why is this an issue in reference to Dr. West? The Democratic Party obviously selects the candidate. We've talked about this before on the show in reference to the DNC fraud lawsuit. We talked about how the Democratic Party is a corporation and how they argued in court that they actually do not owe you a fair election. I want to take you back to 2016, because for the people like David Axelrod saying that Dr. West is a problem running third party, for the outlets like The Nation or Jacobin saying he should be running through the Democratic Party, let me show you why he is not running through the Democratic Party. This was 2016. Why does Sanders do better than Clinton against Donald Trump? I just want to jog your memory just a little bit. Remember this. According to the latest NBC News /SurveyMonkey weekly election tracking poll, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton is now only slightly ahead of businessman Donald Trump in a general election matchup among registered voters, 47% to 45%. Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders, however, continues to perform much better against the presumptive Republican nominee than Clinton, and is currently beating him by a full 12 points, 52% to 40%. Why does Sanders do better than Clinton against Trump? Look at the poll. Look at the graph here. If the 2016 presidential election were being held today, again, there's Clinton in blue, Trump is red, right? So you'll see that she's really close to him. But when we go to Bernie Sanders, if the 2016 presidential election were being held today, Bernie Sanders was way above Donald Trump. This article was released, again, this was 2016. This was June 6th of 2016. And these polls here were from May, right? So they're showing you the big difference. So if Bernie Sanders was beating Donald Trump in a head-to-head, according to the polls, and Hillary Clinton, if we go back, was like neck and neck here with Donald Trump, the problem is not the fact that candidates like Jill Stein ran third party. The problem is that the DNC chose the losing candidate. Let's say this one more time. The DNC chose the losing candidate. They chose Hillary Clinton, who was neck and neck with Donald Trump at this point in time, instead of choosing Bernie Sanders, who was ahead, way ahead of Donald Trump. The reason why Hillary Clinton lost is because the DNC chose the losing candidate. Because they chose the candidate that was status quo. They chose the candidate that would support the war complex. They chose the candidate that would back corporate interest, even if that candidate was technically the losing candidate. That's who they selected, and that's why she lost. So this is not Jill Stein's fault. This is not Bernie Sanders' fault. That's the DNC's fault. Anytime Bernie Sanders had won every county in West Virginia and they chose to give, the superdelegates chose to give the state to Hillary Clinton anyway. They tried to force Hillary Clinton onto the people. Even when the polls were telling you that was not what the people wanted. And that's why they lost. And that is why someone like Dr. West should not run through the Democratic Party. Because if they did it to Bernie, they'll do it to Dr. West as well. They have done it to Dennis Kucinich. They'll do it to anyone who's not for that status quo. So for the people that are writing in all these corny outlets like The Nation and Jacobin, pushing this narrative on people, saying he should run as a Democrat, I'm here to let you know, those people know this game too. Everything I just told you, those people are very well aware of this as well. So what's their angle? Think about it.